And welcome back, everybody. The race is over. We're back in the warm down pool. My partner in crime, the Robin to my Batman, Dan Flack, Eric Skelly. We have a special guest this week. So you're not just going to hear us talk about swimming. We're bringing in the Hall of Famer, the man, the myth, the legend, the UVA icon himself, Mark Bernadino. Welcome to the warm down show, warm down pool, Coach.
Thank you, Eric. It's fun to be here with you and Dan, two special people, and hopefully we'll have some fun tonight.
Get three guys who love the sport of swimming talking. You never know what's going to happen. Obviously, any great character of a film or a novel, man, they have an interesting backstory. Dan knows it. I know the history of it. I've heard you speak several times. Coach Dino, tell us a little bit about yourself, so our listeners can understand your journey in the swimming world.
Okay, well, this could take a long time. I'm an old man now.
That's what we're here for.
Okay, my family joined a little neighborhood swim pool way back when in the early 1960s, and none of us knew how to swim. There were 4 kids, and neither of my parents swam, so we joined this club, and my mom and dad they didn't know how to swim, but they taught us how to swim, and it was, kind of the old-fashioned way. Jump in, you go down underwater, you fight your way to the top, you stick your head up, you grab a breath of air, and then you maybe take a kick or an arm stroke and they grab you and put you back on the wall and say go again. So I started one line at a time across a 6-lane pool in 3.5 or 4 feet water till we successfully learned to swim across the pool. Maybe we got to where we could do it in 1 breath or 2 breaths, and once we could do that, we joined the summer league swim team. So for us, that was Hilltop Swim Team in Haverford, Pennsylvania, in Delaware County, because when you're from Philly, you're also from whatever county you're from. So where are you from? Delco.
Montco.
There you go, Montgomery County. So that's how I learned to swim. My first sport was actually wrestling. That was my father was a college wrestler, so as a young child, we wrestled from the time I was probably 2 years old until forever. But there was no wrestling in the Catholic school system. I went to a Catholic grade school, St. Dorothy's, a Catholic high school, Cardinal O'Hara, and I'd begun my swimming in the summer swim league. I moved to a YMCA when I was 9 or 10, joined that team. Was certainly not a swimmer at any level of excellence, but it was something to pursue and something to work at, and friendships made and opportunities. And so I swam YMCA swimming and high school swimming. Was fortunate enough to have a really good senior year of high school swimming. Won the Philadelphia Catholic League Championship, was a silver medalist at the Eastern Interscholastic meet, caught the attention of a couple of college coaches, and that opened the door for me to go to the University of Virginia. So I attended UVA, swam at UVA, and I was a late bloomer, so I had a good college swimming career. Moved into industry, worked for Procter & Gamble for a couple of years in sales, but I really missed the sport of swimming. My summer vacation was always spent going back to UVA, working with my coach, Ron Good. And so my 2 weeks of vacation were coaching in swim camps. And I knew there was something deep inside. I wanted to coach. My dad was a high school coach, a wrestling coach. So I was admitted to graduate school, was an assistant coach during my 2 years of grad school, was at the right place at the right time in late August of 1978 when Coach Good left, and the athletic director, Gene Corrigan, interviewed me for the job, but told me I wasn't ready. He told me I did a great job, chase my coaching dream, and that someday he felt I would have a chance to interview at a good school. They offered the position to another coach. That gentleman accepted the job, and lo and behold, the week before school started, his wife decided she did not want to move. She did not want to uproot their family, especially with school just beginning at the university where they were. They agreed to keep him on board. Gene Corrigan called me up and said, "Can you get to my office right away? This is important." So I went to Mr. Corrigan's office, and he told me what had happened, and he said, "Would you be willing to take this position on an interim basis for 1 year? I'll evaluate you, I'll give you honest feedback, and we'll see what happens after 1 year." So lo and behold, I did my my first year there, he decided that my work was acceptable, that it was good enough to give me another opportunity. We shook hands, and I stayed there for the next 35 years. So just at the right place, at the right time, the right opportunity to try and build a program. And I'm forever grateful. And the funny thing is, or not the funny thing, it's actually a wonderful thing. I finished my coaching at NC State as an associate head coach, and my athletic director was Eugene Corrigan Jr., his son, Boo Corrigan. So I began and finished my coaching career 48 years with a Corrigan at the helm. So forever grateful to that family, a wonderful family, both of them great administrators and people who took good care of the coaches that worked under their guidance.
Sounds very familiar, Coach. Sounds very familiar. The first recruiting trip I ever went on was at the University of Virginia, and my son's final coach was with you at Virginia and then with you at NC State. So the circle of life, right?
Yeah, it is the circle of life. And
Yep.
you were one of the first guys I went after. I remember that very well.
Yep.
And I wish you had come, but you went to Chapel Hill and enjoyed a phenomenal swimming career, athletic career there. And then you went into the coaching profession and have been blessed to enjoy so many, 30 some odd years, maybe close to 40 years of incredible coaching yourself.
Yeah, our paths crossed a bunch. We had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, they did. We've had a lot of fun. It's been a friendship that goes back 45 years now almost.
Yep. I laughed. It made me laugh when I went on the trip with Sam, and Coach Braden said, "So this is the Sam Flack I've been hearing Coach Bernardino pound his fist about all the time." I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, we've been blessed with a lot of mutual friends, a lot of mutual colleagues. Starting,
Yes.
most important one that we love is your son, Sam, who I'll forever love him. He's just an incredible human being.
Thank you.
And then our coaching paths, we've both been influenced by Schulberg and Jack Bowerly and Greg Troy.
Yeah.
Matt Kredich. We've been blessed with mutual friends and colleagues who we've shared so much of our sport with. We've learned from and talked to them about it and shared ideas and thoughts and philosophies. And that's one of the best things about our sport. And Eric knows this well too, having been involved in it for so many years at so many levels. I think that the people who are in this profession are giving, and we care about each other just like we care about our athletes, and building relationships is the most important thing you can do in life. It's the most important thing you can do as a coach. It's the most important thing you can do as a father, as a husband. All of it ties together. And the three of us are perfect examples of what this profession is all about, I hope.
Well,
Yeah.
I think you hit it right on the head there, Coach. If you think about a lot of the coaches that have been in it the longest, we never set out that this was going to be our career path, or very, very few occasions like that. I know you worked for Braden Holloway at NC State. I met Braden for the very first time when I had just taken over as the head coach at the University of the Cumberlands. Braden was the graduate assistant for Max at the University of the South. So that was the first time I got to meet him. But he didn't start out as a coach. Todd DeSorbo has gone on record and said he was in accounting or actuarial work. We've all kind of, it was Mike Llewellyn. So Mike was at the time he was the head age group coach with the Kansas City Blazers, he was at Mission Viejo. He had been with KC Blazers for a long time. Mike Llewellyn said, he goes, "You love your family, you love your friends, you love your children, but swimming has your soul." And I think a lot of people, especially for us who have been in it for a while, and I'm still in it. You just got out. You got your freedom. You got to retire finally and enjoy some not making recruiting calls or dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds. But we do this because we love to have that impact on young people, and whether it's the athletes that we have or, I mean, the mentorship abilities that we have. And I think that's something that we need now more than ever in coaching, because we see a lot of young coaches come into the ranks. And maybe this is just my impression, Coach. I'd love to get yours on it. But There's a lot of cases where we get a lot of young coaches that they get done with their GA positions, man. They're full of piss and vinegar and they're ready to be a head coach, and they fall on their face because they don't have that network. They haven't made those connections. And I think now more than ever, again, my opinion, that, man, we need to get these young guys. We don't need to tell them how to coach, but we need to be there to help them when they stumble and when they fall. And I think that is going to be critical for our sport and the longevity of coaches. So, but I'd be interested on your take with that, Coach.
I think it was helpful for me to step aside because I saw so many great young coaches. 8 years ago, I was in a state of panic as to who is going to be that next wave, who's going to move our sport forward. How is this going to play out when the Troys and the Bowerleys and folks like that, the Dave Salos, the Frank Bushes, you just started seeing the great ones starting to come to the end of the line. But then I had the opportunity to work obviously with McGee Moody first at South Carolina and some of the great young coaches on his staff. Then I came to NC State and worked with Braden, and there wasn't a single young coach that, as you said, A, wasn't full of piss and vinegar, B, wasn't passionate about learning and asking questions. And that, for me, the time I spent at South Carolina with their young assistants, always spent time every day in the office, and they would ask questions, and they were curious, and they wanted to know, why does this work? Why doesn't this work? How do you talk to a kid who's going through these problems? And then that same series of questions and sequencing took place at NC State, and there you had the Bobby Guntoros, the Brant Nigros, DeSorbos off of that tree, Gary Taylor's off of that tree. And now you have Dan Kessler, Dan Kolupski, Kevin Happ, Steph Wendell Schaefer, Michael Barrick. I felt like walk away because these youngins are going to run by you so fast they're going to leave your hat on the ground while they're stepping on it. So I feel really good about that. But yes, I agree, Eric, and I think Dan is starting to fill some of this role in with his business. We do need those veteran coaches that have been through the ups and the downs, the ins and the outs of our sport, to be there, to be able to counsel and to be able to share and to be able to answer questions from these young coaches who are ready to charge forward. And I think one of the things I was able to tell a lot of these coaches was, be patient, learn, and opportunity will come your way. Don't feel as though you have to be a head coach at age 28 or age 30. Don't put that pressure on yourself right away. Learn from the master, the man that's ahead of you, that's leading your program, the Braden Holloway, if you will, the Todd DeSorbo, whoever, the Carol Capitanis. Learn from those people and then make that leap forward. But yes, there is a role for retired coaches, guys like Dave Salo, David Marsh, people who are now stepping down that can, if somehow there's a way to use their influence and guidance and maybe just have clinics where they talk with coaches instead of talk to swimmers. I don't know, but be there for a day to answer questions from aspiring coaches about what the career path looks like, how to make things work in the best fashion possible.
Yeah, it's super important and super fun to continue to talk shop. That was always one of my favorite components, and shop can be, and oftentimes, and the things that I try to talk about now is anybody can write a hard set, or people know how to the whole planning of the practices or the seasons or whatever. That's not hard to find information on that can really give you a good education on things. But we're not coaching robots. We're not coaching machines. We're coaching human beings. We're coaching people. And I just think it's critical for all young coaches to coach themselves up on the human side of it and making sure that you're working. You're working with the people for the right reason, and you'll get a ton out of it if that's the case. And it'll be, the time will fly by on the deck as opposed to being a chore if you're in it for the right reason. It's funny, you said you mentioned Greg Choi. He gave me I only spent a little bit of time, but my time with him on pool decks was always awesome because he was one who I always got something for, and he later on told me, "Well, I tell you this stuff because I knew you were listening." And like one of the things he taught me about was, you really want to see if you love coaching or not. Go coach some people who can't swim. Go coach a masters group, so I'm coaching one of my many 7 million hats I wear right now. I work with master swimmers, and I get so fired up when they're doing just the simplest things, and you can see their progress, and that little bird in my head goes off and saying, wow, he was so right, because now my toolbox is bigger, with ways to convey what I'm trying to teach them. Folks who can swim at a higher level, because I was able to get it across these folks who, they're not even sure if they can make it to the other end, let alone swim a stroke properly, or etc. So that's so true. It's I definitely never want to be the old guy yelling at the clouds. I always I take a lot of pride in keeping an eye on, okay, what's I always have asked myself, all right, how are we getting these times we're getting now, for better or for worse? Why are we not progressing? Or wow, why are we really having breakthroughs in these particular areas, and finding out the why behind it. I'm a huge believer in that. It'll kind of, at some point, I want to talk to you about recruiting and the importance of it, and what you valued, etc., because we've all had to do it. And I think this is something, Lord knows, it's a huge topic that everybody wants to talk about. And it changes and it changes and it keeps on changing every year. There's new rules, new ways of doing things. Just with Sam alone, I was a little late to the party, thinking to myself, oh, he's a junior. They're starting to recruit juniors now. His year was kind of like the first year they were doing that. And I'm like, I think the schools want like the parents to come along. And now I was, it took the old coaching me was too busy with too much other stuff. And I finally clued in, hey, you got to put on your parent hat and go on some of these trips with them.
Yeah,
So,
we'll save that for a little later.
Yeah.
One of the, as you were talking, it reminded me, I ran swim camps for 40 years. It was one of the most valuable and important things I did, because for anywhere from 3 to 6 full weeks in the summer, all I did was teach people who weren't all that good, mind you. They came to camp for a reason.
right.
It brought me back to the fundamentals of our sport, and it revolved around drills and skills, not training. I wasn't running a training camp. I was running a camp that would enhance the children that were in that camp 3, 4, 5 years down the road. The majority of the kids in the camp tended to be 11 to 14. Plenty of them went on to swim collegiately. Others just swam high school and club swimming. But because we broke everything down to its simplest components, I continued to learn. I continued to think. I would write a stroke critique booklet every other year, so that as things evolved and changed in the sport, that would change the paragraph or the page I would write about butterfly. Where the techniques changed, where however the pattern of the stroke may have evolved. Teaching turns, teaching starts, writing about turns, writing about starts, filming kids, playing the film back for them, letting them hear and see what they did wrong. Back in the day of Super 8, I used to watch film in reverse to learn how to make swimmers faster. So I would watch it forward, then I would put it in reverse, and I would watch them swim in reverse to see if I could pick up any flaws or any techniques that enhanced or enabled them to be as good as they were. And it was amazing what you could learn watching it backwards sometimes. So it's a sport that will forever be dynamic, right? It's not good. That's one of the great things about our profession, is every day is different. We never stop learning. We're still learning. We're talking to each other about how we learn right now and why we learn. So there's so much evolution, continuing evolution. Some of it is scientific. Some of it is technical, mechanical. Some of it happens in the weight room, where we can or can't control what they're doing. We're smart enough now to look for expert help, people who understand the human anatomy and the physiology and what muscles are being used in the sport of swimming, versus having just some strength coach who coaches offensive linemen and here You got the month of December off, go work with the swim team kind of thing, like it used to be back in the olden days. So we're in a dynamic profession. It's a dynamic sport. It's a dynamic profession. It's forever evolving. But Dan and Eric, you both said the key word in that evolution of our sport remains relationships. If you can't talk to the kids, if you can't understand them, I'll go back to my years as an athlete. Coaches were dictatorial. They told us and we said yes sir or yes ma'am. You just did what you were told. You didn't question anything. Over the time from the 70s through the 80s, the 90s, now into the 2000s, we're seeing they have so much information at their fingertips. The athletes have so much information. Their parents have information. We have to cultivate that relationship piece, because you said they're not robots, Dan, right? You said these are human beings. So if as coaches we cultivate that relationship piece, when we ask them to make a stroke change, or we ask them to make an attitudinal change, or when we best decipher how to motivate them and how to connect one brain to the next brain, that allows us to be more successful. And ultimately most importantly, allows them to reach that level of success that they're so hungry for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that's the one thing that I wish I had done a better job of early in my career, is developing those relationships with the athletes. I got very lucky, and my life has gone full circle in the coaching world. When I started my professional coaching career here in the state of Illinois, in Decatur originally, I was an age group coach for probably about 8 or 9 years before I went into the college level. And a lot of the guys that I learned from early in my career are still coaching here in Illinois. So now that I'm in the Chicagoland area, they see me on a deck, and it was great rekindling it with them, especially Dave Krodiak, who's the head coach and aquatics director at FMC. I've known Dave for 30 years. Dave inadvertently became my mentor. I don't know what he saw in me early on, maybe. Again, there's that piss and vinegar we talk about. But I think that having those relationships and seeing those coaches again, it's rekindled a lot in me, because I see the relationships that they have with their athletes. And it's my only real regret that back in early parts of my career, I didn't focus on that nearly as much as I should have. But I do know that in my more recent experience, especially collegiately, I've made that concerted effort for those athlete coach relationships. And they don't always start off great. We all know that. Like they can start off real rocky, and then you find out later on how much of an impact you had on that athlete. And then with other coaches, again, I was so blessed. When I got here to Illinois, I had so many people that I could lean on and were willing to listen, and just to hear me rant on something and then tell me how I was wrong, because I was 23 years old and thought I was a genius. But I think that it's my responsibility as a coach, just like I think it's every one of us. It's our responsibility to be that mentor, to be that rock that younger coaches can lean on. Because I've learned so much from a swimming standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, just new ideas. I'm not that creative. I've never been a guy who's going to be like, I'm going to reinvent the wheel here or anything like that. I have very traditional coaching upbringing, but a lot of these younger coaches, man, they think so far outside the box that they've blown the box up and they move to a different area code. It's refreshing, because it gives me an opportunity to learn from them. And because a lot of the young coaches I work with are not much older than the athletes I'm coaching, generationally, there's my link. There's my opportunity to learn how to communicate. Because again, I'm a Gen Xer. Like, my coaches were head down, follow the black line, breathe only when I let you kind of mentality. And if you did 8,000 yards, then do another 1,000, because more must be better. That was the mentality back then. But now to understand Gen Z, this generation, which I have 2 children who are part of, they have so much information at their fingertips, and they may not always know how to ask the questions, but man, they've got great questions. They always do. Their timing can be a little off, like in the middle of the workout. Why are we doing it this way? Let's have this conversation later when my head's not about to explode. But they do. They really want to learn, and they want to understand, not just, they want to know our thought process, but they want you to understand their thought process and how what angle they're coming at it. And I think that for a lot of coaches, it's very difficult for them to adapt to that. And I think especially young coaches, that they can be a little bullheaded. Some of the older coaches can too. I've had those conversations where coaches don't want to adapt, and in this day and age, man, if you don't adapt, you're not going to have a job for very long.
No, that's very true. And actually, with this generation, a lot of times, as you're giving the set, if you tell them why, it makes it easier for them to want to do it. So, okay, gang, we're going to do 5 300s. We're going to descend them 1 through 5. The reason we're doing this is now we're leaving in 10 seconds. So you don't leave enough time to ask the questions. You give them the why, and then you start the set, and they can process it as they start the set. But I think it's very important with today's swimming athletes to, whether it's pre or post set, giving them the why. I think that's important.
I heard. I really enjoy now, and I try and pass this along to younger coaches, is when I'm working with an athlete, or one of the first things I ask is, are you numbers or letters? And they look at me like, what are you talking about? And when I'm asked that, and then I'll follow it up with like, well, in school, would you prefer to write a paper on a topic that you're interested in, or would you rather, write out an equation of some sort that you're wondering how you're going to figure this out, or work in the chem lab and not blow somebody? What, in other words, how do you see the world? How do you learn? It's so critical to find out how the kids learn. What do they react better to working with numbers or letters? What's going to light their light bulb? I immediately would keep a little list about it. That's why COVID was a real hassle from a coaching standpoint, because you had to adapt. But man, I learned so much from all those adaptations that I had to do, and just getting to knowing that we only had so much time in the pool, and that we had to be extremely efficient if we were going to be successful, forced me to really streamline a lot of things we did, and figure out the kids on the front end, and let them know before we even started the practice. Like I'd send them an email early, this is what we're doing this afternoon, this is why, blah blah blah, here's what you did, this group, this is why you guys are doing this, and you guys are doing that, and this is what's going to help us stick it to team X, Y, or Z that we're trying to beat later on down the road. And I think I can't stress this enough, young coaches out there, get a feel for how the people you work with, how they learn, understand how they learn, and that'll help you communicate. And you won't get so many, what's he talking about? I have no idea what he's talking. You won't get that response so much. They'll be a little bit more clued in. And sometimes instead of having to go 5, 6 different drafts of a set for it to really work and you really get the benefit, maybe you only have to do 1 or 2 dress rehearsals.
What you're saying is we are teachers, coaches.
Yes, 100%.
And we have to figure out how to teach and get our message across the best way to a large group of kids in such a fashion that they will embrace it, and they'll work together as a cohort and make things happen for one another, with one another, so that the team itself can be better.
Yeah, I had a coach one time, this wasn't too long ago. I saw how he was interacting with his athletes. And great example, you said about the 5 300s, and kind of do it, here's the reason why we're doing it. And he'd give quick descriptions, give them 15 seconds, and then they were off on the wall. And I asked him, I said, well, some of those kids are going to come back later and they're going to want details on this. You could just see it in their eyes that we got to push off. And he's like, and of course he used a very dated reference. I got it. His athletes had no clue. And he goes, yeah, so for the workouts, I give them a Polaroid. I'll paint them a portrait later. And I go, I dare. And I looked at him, I go, I dare you to use a Polaroid reference to those athletes. And he goes, I don't think I've ever done that. And he did. And the kids just were like, and I just looked at him and go, he gave you a Snapchat. He's going to give you an Instagram reel later. And he go, and the kids were all like, oh, got it. And he just looked at me and goes, I'm too old for. He's like, I'm too old for that. Like, that's why I got these young bucks around me. And he just looked at me and go, how do you know that? I go, I got 8. I think at the time Drake was 18 and Connor was 16. I go, this is their generation. So, but yeah, it's really, they want communication. They want you to paint you the portrait. They want to see the Sistine Chapel. Now sometimes they get a little narrow focused. The phrase I like to use all the time is, they see trees, we see the forest. Sometimes they don't see the world view. They have their view, and it's them. They're here, but they've got to open that up, and that's our role as coaches, is to allow them to see the whole forest there.
So, Coach, there's so much stuff going on with collegiate swimming. It changes literally by the day. Where do you see things going in the next couple of years? What are some of your concerns? What are your potential positives? What are your thoughts on some of these the new world order of collegiate swimming, which is ever changing?
I've chosen to be an optimist on this,
All right.
and I've thought carefully about it. There are things that obviously are. I'm going to tell you, Dan, that I choose to be an optimist on the future of our sport. I'm excited. There are things that obviously are scary, but I think there are a lot of opportunities out there. I think we're going to see more. Let's start with roster limits.
Let's start with
I think it's okay. I think the number that they chose, the number of 30, is a fair number that will allow the bigger, stronger Division One programs to be who they want to be and what they want to be. Now, there are some changes. The SEC has a lower number for men than 30, but I think what's going to happen is the talent's going to spread out. There's going to be more teams with opportunities to grow and to excel. I think there's going to be more athletes spread out. There will be more parity in the sport of swimming from a roster perspective. So to me, that's not a negative. That's an opportunity. That's an opportunity for a mid-major school to grow. That's opportunities for Division Two and Division Three universities
yes.
to grow, for kids to move forward. I think what part of this is the athlete and their parents, with the assistance of their club coaches and their high school coaches, have to thoughtfully identify what it is they might like to do with their life, which most kids don't know at age 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, or 21 for that matter, and find the schools that offer them the right academic opportunity. They need to do a deeper dive into what a roster looks like. They can't say, I want to attend University X, which is just a little too fast for who they are. They have to find those universities where they fit in, where they can contribute, where they can be part of the team and grow the team and grow with the team. So to me, I'm optimistic about that. I think this is opening doors for more swim programs to find kids that will help them develop and grow as students, as swimmers, and as human beings. So I'm optimistic there. I'm a little frightened by NIL. That's not something I think I would have enjoyed over the long haul. You know, you get $6,000 if you can help advertise product X. Revenue share, you know what? As I understand it, that's easier for me to grasp and to like.
Yeah.
My swim program has $100,000 of revenue share. I'm the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles swim team. How do I spread my $100,000 out? You get this much, you get this much, you get this much, and you can explain that as a coach. This is how I value it. My sprint group is going to get $60,000. My strokers are going to get $30,000, and my distance swimmers are going to get 10 grand. I mean, you can figure that out for your program, and you can explain that in the recruiting process. You can make that known and understood. Will always be inequities. So that's not new. That's not new to us as coaches. Shouldn't be new to club coaches. There are some programs that will always have more.
Yes.
So deal with it and work with it and function with it and make it happen to the best degree possible so that it'll work for your university and your program. Your ADs understand what they're giving you as head coaches. You can have that conversation if you're worried. You can say, athletic director Jones, I'm only getting 100 grand. This guy down the street's getting 200 grand. So those are conversations that the boss has to have.
This program across the country that we got to compete against now is getting 300 grand.
Yeah, but you know where you stand, right?
Yeah.
You know where you are, and you're going to have to justify that as part of your recruiting process.
Yes. It still blows me away to see Cal and Stanford in the finals at ACCs. Just blows me away.
That's different. I've gotten used to that. I don't think we're finished with that. I think we will continue to see changes in conferences. I think
Yes.
there's some things out there that are frightening, but I'm hopeful that they don't happen real fast. I'm hoping that there's a period of this 5 years to 10 years where things will slowly we'll find an equilibrium, we'll find balance, and we'll be able to continue to charge forward.
Yeah, I think the one that, for me, the thing that scares me the most, it isn't what happens at D2, D3, or the NAIA or NJCA. It's really what the future of Division I is going to look like. And it doesn't help when you have the SEC commissioner and coaches, football coaches in the SEC, like, well, maybe we're just split away and do our own thing. And then you've got, I think the Big 12 commissioner and the ACC commissioner both came out and said, okay, go. Take all your other sports with you because we're not going to let you, you're not coming to our national championships. So I think they've toned down the rhetoric a little bit on that. Hopefully, I would like to think. And again, I'm a Big Ten guy. I grew up in Big Ten country in Ohio. I mean, I get it. I love my Buckeyes, and Bill Durancott is a friend, and he was my former coach. But I know they don't want to see it go that way. I miss the days of the old Big East and the Pac-10 and the Southwest Conference when you had that crew in there. I'm optimistic, but Dino, I think you're more optimistic than I am. I don't know. Maybe it's just the nihilist in me. I'm a little nervous because I really see there are decisions that are being made right now in our sport. I mean, there were rumors going around about what's going to happen to Pitt. I know there's at least, with obviously Chase stepping down when he did, and I know there's at least one Power 4 Division I program that when his athletes graduate, he doesn't get the scholarship money back. So they're eventually going to be a non-scholarship Power 4 Division I program, very similar to how Boston College has been for many, many years. And I don't think those teams are going to go away. I think they're still going to have people. I mean, Dara's getting kids to go to BC every year because it's a great academic institution. But I worry about those scholarship opportunities, especially for men, because those are already at a disadvantage in many ways. I just worry about that for those opportunities going away. But I'm hoping that at some point everything starts to, like as you said, settles down. My goodness, we've had You talk about Cal and Stanford in the ACC. When I hear, hey, the Big Ten championships are going to be at the University of Southern California, I'm like, what? Doesn't matter the sport. It's just like, first of all, those Midwestern kids don't know how to swim outdoors. We wouldn't be able to handle that in SoCal, but, it's surreal to think that. And my wife asked me today, because she had no idea, how many teams are in the Big Ten? 10? And there's 18. And she goes, I remember when it was stupid when Penn State was the 11th. And I go, yeah, well. Yes, very much so. I remember when people thought the 11th member of the Big Ten was going to be Notre Dame. And yeah, we're still waiting on that one, by the way.
It's very interesting, but I really think it's important that, the volume is loud right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the volume is going to calm down. I have to believe that the commissioners of the Power 4 conferences communicate. They communicate I would hope on a daily basis, that they're not selfish in their interests, but they see a big picture for sport. They see a big picture that involves broad-based athletic participation, and it allows opportunities for young men and young women to prosper and to grow and to become the best version of themselves as human beings, as students, and as athletes. I worry a lot about all the transferring that's going on. I think that's a huge negative. Obviously, we've added a 5th year now, 5 years to compete. I'm not sure that was the greatest idea, but I think it helps alleviate some of the red shirt and hardship waivers that were taking place. So that was middle ground. I think that helped. You don't get use a year because you're injured. You lost that year. You use a year because you want to sit out and train for the Olympics. You lose that year. So in a sense, that will help. I hope. I don't like the free floating transfer rules. I think they're going to. I think I'm right on this. I think they're saying you can only do that once now without having to sit out. Is that?
I think that is proposed. I don't know that it has been ratified yet.
Correct. It hasn't been ratified yet. But.
Yeah. So, and then Division II is doing the 5-for-5 as well. So they're the next ones up. The NAIA will be voting on it at some point for next year. D3 is the last stronghold right now, but I'm talking to my coaching brethren at the Division III level. We know it's coming. I think our presidents and our institutions are going to push back on that a little bit more because D3 is just a different model. But I'm already prepping this mentality. And the moment D2 made the announcement of 5-for-5, I've already had a conversation with one of my female athletes. She's looking to go to graduate school and she wants to in molecular biology. Okay. She's a molecular bio undergrad right now. And we had the conversation the other day. I saw her at the Illinois Senior State meet, and I just said, you're looking at grad school, you're going to have a 5th year of eligibility, and you're a 424, 400 IMer. Somebody D2, mid-major D1 is going to want you because you're going to be a contributor for it. And she hadn't thought of that. So I don't have any grad program. We have one graduate program at Lake Forest. It's a master's in teaching. So I don't know that I'm going to get a whole lot of 5th year transfers, which is fine. But if I can help develop athletes here and they have an opportunity to get part of the grad school paid for, and I'm not, they're using me for their undergrad, but they're using that 5th year to develop and get an opportunity at maybe a Division I school, then I'm going to take full advantage of that. And I'm going to help those kids to get to those levels with the contacts that I've made. So here's why I like the 5 for 5. And it has nothing to do with our sport because it wasn't a problem here. But I'm not going to have to see a 9th year tight end for the University of Miami now because he found every loophole humanly possible to stay in college to get NIL. We'll see if the courts will uphold all that because it's already being challenged by, I think it's basketball players are challenging it right now. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I like the 5 for 5. I was part of a group of coaches in the NAIA while I was there that we were pushing for it heavily because we wanted, as an NAIA, we wanted to stand out. We wanted to be different than everybody, and that ship sailed. So, but I know that they're coming around to it, and I think if you've got junior college kids coming out of the NJCAA, those kids are going to have 3 years of eligibility now. So they're not going to have to rush to get their 2 years of eligibility done, or 2 years of schooling done and paid for academically. They can do it a little more naturally. So, and I'm sure all the JUCO coaches are talking about that as well. So
yeah. And I think it's a win for universities financially because most of these kids aren't going to get master's degrees in that 5th year. Probably the majority of them are going to use 5 years as undergrads.
Yeah.
So that's a financial windfall for a lot of universities. If you have 500 athletes who are spending another year of tuition fees, room, board, and books, they win.
And you think of a lot of schools right now who are having enrollment issues because we have declining birth rates going on in this country. Worldwide, we do. And with that, you got heads in beds, which means universities have an opportunity to keep their doors open, and especially small schools, D2, D3, NAIA, a lot of mid-major schools that are private. It's about their head count. And I'm lucky I work for a school that doesn't have an issue with that right now. But who's to say what's going to happen in about 5 years? So
that's very true.
Yeah. Coach, I want to get your thoughts. Obviously, University of Virginia head coach for a very long time, South Carolina associate head coach, NC State. You've seen a lot of generations. How has it evolved over the years of just developing team culture? Because that is the number. I don't know how much recruiting you were doing at NC State, but man, one of the number one questions I get all the time is, what's your team's culture? Like any of us are going to say, oh, our kids, they fight every single day. We have a battle royal. I have boxing gloves for them in an octagon. We're not going to say that, but give me your thoughts on developing team culture within a program.
The first question that any recruit will ask on a phone call, and they'll probably get the same answer from 95 out of 100 coaches: we're a family. And a team should be a family. A team should be a safe place where you have brothers and you have sisters and you have coaches who serve in the major advisory role. But culture is, quite honestly, very difficult to develop. It takes time, and every year the culture of a team is a little bit different. It's never the same because 1/4 of your team leaves and 1/4 of your team comes in brand new. So it's an ever-evolving, constant pursuit by team members and coaching staff members, and it has to be done hand-in-hand, lockstep. The staff, the coaching staff, the grown-ups have to involve the athletes to a high level. And I don't know that there's such a thing as a perfect team culture. I think just like a family, there's always squabbles, there's always personality issues. Nobody is everybody's best friend. And in some cases, 1 or 2 people are everybody's best friend. So you have to figure out a way to teach young people that You're all different. You're allowed to be different. Accept and understand each other's differences, embrace the differences, and learn how to talk with one another. The biggest problem with this generation is they spend a lot of time in their own heads. They have headphones on, they have what are those little ear things, those little white AirPods on. They don't spend as much time speaking with one another. So I think coaches need to be willing to take time to pull away maybe from some of the time in the water, perhaps most importantly early in the season, and have meetings and have small retreats and have team functions. Assign an older swimmer to a younger swimmer, or assign two older swimmers to a younger swimmer to help teach them how things are done here. This is how we speak to one another. This is when times are difficult. Don't feel stressed about going and talking to your coaches about it. I think that's what culture really is. That's learning that we're all different. There's 24 men and 24 women, or 30 men and 30 women, and you come from a different place and a different family, and maybe you've never even had a roommate in your whole life. A lot of these kids have never had a roommate. So going to college and living with somebody is in of itself a major challenge. So I think that it involves everybody. Culture involves everybody. It involves time away from the pool. You don't develop culture when you're swimming back and forth over a black line. That's part of it, but that's not where you really develop culture. You develop culture at breakfast, at the table there. You develop culture in different ways, in team retreats, on bus rides. Yes, there are such things as traditions, and those get passed along, team traditions, but culture is, you can never stop working on culture. I think that's a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 6 months of the season to create culture.
Always thought, one of the great parts of being part of a team was that being part of your educational experience at college of meeting. The cool thing about our sport is it's worldwide. The whole world does it, and it's a skill that the whole world needs to have, or else you're going to drown, right? So you can meet a lot of different people from a lot of different cultures, a lot of different points of view, and there's a lot to be learned and a lot to be gained from that experience, completely separate from the time swum, etc. That can end up being later on in life invitations to weddings. Heck, I am happily married to my beautiful wife, and we swam on the same team in high school and for a year in college, and we barely spoke to each other back then. You just never know how it's going to turn out. So, but being part of that, and that's why I think from a recruiting process, it's so critical that, there's so many coaches that just recruit, a time that they see on SwimCloud, right? And have no clue on what they're really getting in the person. And that's why, and like the flip side, I work a lot with kids who are looking for colleges and trying to figure out where they should go. And I always say finding their shoe that fits. And one of the things I tell them to do is when you go on your visits and you want to learn about culture and this and that, ask the same question. This is not your time to be quiet. It's your time to really ask a question. Ask the same the same question to a bunch of people, not just in the swimming program. Administrators or academic folks you meet. Maybe you're at the dining hall and one of the people who is serving lunch, etc. What do you think of the swim team? Are they jerks? Are they great people? But ask that common question to everybody. And, if you get the same answer basically from everybody, then okay, that's the real deal. That's the way it is. If you ask 20 people the same question, you get 18 different answers. I always tell them that's a red flag. And you should really consider that. Consider that even, in many ways more importantly than what kind of sets the coach gives or what kind of equipment they have or, those kind of things.
Yeah, for me right now, especially in my situation, I get asked the question, what's your culture like? And I go, well, I've had 4 months to get to know this team, and I only was with them for about 3 weeks. So we're going to find out what my culture is. But the last program, it took 15 years for me to really build a culture that I was very proud of in the last program I was at. And we had some great years, and then we had some years where it only took 1 or 2 people, and it all came tumbling down, and we had to kind of rebuild. And I was very lucky that I early on in my career, I was taught, and I think we all were, that we definitely, you mentioned it, we can't just recruit a time. You can't just recruit an individual because they're fast. You have to find out who they are. And their club coaches are going to be very transparent with them. Their high school coaches are going to be transparent with you because they're staking their reputations on this kid. I remember when I was coaching club, I had college coaches ask me all the time. They'd call up and say, talk to me about so-and-so. And I would tell them the good, and I would tell them my areas of concern. There was one time I definitely warned off of coaches on a kid. I won't lie on that, but I knew what they were getting. But for the most part, man, I said, this is the kind of person you're going to get. If you need a dynamic leader, if you're going to want somebody who is going to step up and do right, then absolutely, this is your person. If you want somebody who's just going to follow blindly and isn't going to rock the boat, okay, well, then this is the person you need to have. So I think that's something that culture is just critical for teams but it's constantly evolving. It's not your team, like you said, 25% of your team is going out the door next year and you're getting a brand new 25%. So I used to tell a swimmer all the time, my assistant coaches, they would always say, oh, when we bring in these kids, this kid, next year will be better. And all I would say is next year will be different. You can't say if it's better. And one of my former assistants, he went to another team. He got a full-time position. And the head coach is like, man, when we get so-and-so, the head coach is saying that so-and-so and so-and-so, and he goes, this is going to be such a better environment. And Bryce, my former assistant, stood there and he goes, all I heard was your voice in the back of my head going, next year will be different. That's all you can say. You can't evaluate better or worse until the season's over.
I think one of the questions you asked me is over time. I think there are fewer leaders now.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly.
You used to have a team full of leaders. Dan was part of a team full of leaders when he was swimming. His team was loaded with leaders, and I've coached teams that had many, many leaders, but over the decades, I've seen that teams seem to have fewer leaders and more followers, and that's something I do worry about moving forward. We need to do a better job of cultivating young people to be leaders. We used to have more come to us as leaders. So in a sense, we're asking whoever is responsible for young people ages 12 to 18, can we cultivate more leadership skills and characteristics in that age group so that when they get to the next level, they're able to handle the stresses and the pressures and contribute to culture versus just wanting to be part of a culture.
Yep. And I think a lot of times you see swimmers, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. They equate leadership with how fast they are. And people generally assume that he's the fastest swimmer, that's your team captain. The number of team captains that I have had who have been my slowest swimmer on a roster, I can't even count. And it has nothing to do with that I'm intentionally picking it. They have qualities. And you can't tie their leadership value to their performances at a conference or a national championship. Because I've known some, I don't know about you, Coach, you've been doing it longer than I have. I've known some really, really great swimmers in my time, and I wouldn't trust them with a box of Kleenex, let alone leading my program. Nice people, but man, not a leader. They're followers, or a lot of times they've got blinders on. They're focused in on them, and they're not bringing people along with them. And I had a coach one time, he said one of the things I always ask my athletes at the beginning of every season and at the end of every season, it's the same question. What's your value? What do you bring to the team? And the ones where it changes, those are the ones that I see evolution. I can see that they're growing as individuals, and those are the ones that ultimately can become leaders. But I think you're right, though. Man, leadership getting leaders is harder and harder to come by now because they just come in and they want to fit in and follow. And I think they're so absorbed with what's on here and their value is tied to how many likes they got on a photo or how many people have looked at their Instagram reels. So unfortunately, I don't see any end in sight on that. But I think if I was ever going back to the club level, and that's not happening anytime soon, but if I was ever to go back and coach club, I think that is something that I would probably stress that more than the training side of things, is because we do need leaders, not just within our programs, not just but we need it in society. We need people that are gonna step up and lead us in education and in business and in politics and in medicine and in law. You name it, because they are the future, and we need to. I want the future to be bright. I got two kids that I'm very lucky. They step up and they fill roles wherever they can. My older son is incredibly ambitious, and my younger son, and he's a worker. But I know a lot of his friends, both of them, their friends are just kind of, well, we're just going to follow we're going to be the lemmings. And I have to remind people, the Pied Piper ran off a cliff. So just be very careful on that.
Well, Coach, it's about time that we start to wind things down a little bit. We got some races in Irvine to watch here.
Yeah. The return of Caleb Dressel.
Yeah, he popped a pretty good one this morning.
He had a good morning. He did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Yes, and
that women's 200 fly was tight too. Like that A final is going to be, big time.
The men's was just as tight. I think there was 155.1 to 155.8 were the top 8 swims.
Yeah, and then there was the one young man from Texas that went from like a 2008 down to a 156.2, and he's not in the A final. Like that's how tight that 2 fly got. And God, that's and as long as the piano doesn't drop on Luca's back, man, he closes that out. I mean, he could be in the 153 range tonight. So it's gonna be fun. I mean, even though we don't have our traditional stars there, Dan and I talked about it last week, there's still, man, that was the most relaxed 53-1 I've ever seen a human being drop with Anna Mosch this morning. My goodness.
I think that would be a different race tonight. I think you'll see a lot of women step up their game tonight.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And some kids will make the national junior team trip for Junior Pan Packs.
Yeah, that's exciting.
That'll start, so that's always it's something near and dear to my heart that will be I'm always interested to watch that next wave coming up.
I was looking at that quite closely this morning. I think there's a group of kids that were born in 2008 and 2009 that
they can swim.
That can swim. Yeah.
They can swim.
You look at Luca, the young man from California who's going to Texas, pops a 49-100 freestyle, and he scratches that. He was the top seed in the junior heat, and he scratches that because he's got the 1500 tonight. So
correct. Yeah.
Wow. The range on that. I think about that. Back in my day, back in the 90s, man, there was no miler that was going to pop anywhere, like show that kind of speed. And yet this is a kid who's going to be able to come in to Texas and potentially do the 1650 and be on their 4 free relay. You never know. So that's impressive to say the least. But
that is.
So Coach, one last question. I want to end it up with this. We're all very fortunate to be in where we are in our place in life. We're very fortunate to be part of this wonderful, wild, wacky community of swimming and swimming coaches. So we'd like to end things off with a question. What 3 things are you really grateful for?
I don't think it's very difficult to answer number 1. Number 1, I'm grateful for family. My wife and I have been married for 40 years. We have 4 wonderful children, 4 grandchildren thus far.
I thoroughly enjoyed hearing about your tour of babysitting that you've been doing.
I just finished an 11-day tour of babysitting in 2 different states.
There you go.
So that's a lot of fun. But that's wonderful. Grateful for family. Grateful for my parents, my brothers and sisters. I'm grateful for friends, especially those that are closest to me. But my friends and my colleagues. And I'm very grateful for the athletes who allowed me the privilege and the honor to be their coach, who taught me. I've probably learned who are my best teachers. In many cases, my swimmers have been my best teachers. I've tried to listen as carefully as I could and be as honest as I could with them at all times. But I'm grateful that they allowed me the opportunity to coach them and to work with them. And if I helped mentor or mold any of them in a positive fashion, that makes it even more worthwhile. So I guess that's my answer to that question.
We all know you did. Good job. Eric,
Coach,
you want to sign us off?
Oh yeah, the lifeguards yelling at us. We got to get out of the warm down pool. Coach, always a pleasure to hear you talk. I know I love having you at convention. Any chance to get a chance to speak. Obviously down in Raleigh last year, up on stage with Braden, and then with getting the awards and everything. So I'm looking forward to the next time I could get to stay hear some of the stories from the days at UVA and so forth. But thank you so very much for coming on the Warm Down Pool. For Dan Flack, Eric Skelly, we're signing off. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Eric. Be well.
Thank you, Coach. See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.